Welcome back to the Nautical Chronicle. I'm your host Washington, and I'm here followed with Capitalisimo for tonight. It's been a while since I've worked on the ye old USS Olympia. I've been so busy rigging the Alabama that I've kind of paid minimal attention to the Olympia. So I figured might as well have an American on to chat about American-centric topics while working on an American-centric ship. So I'm here with one of the how many speakers we have at the OGC conference?
That's a great question.
I think about a dozen speakers at the OGC National Conference in Nashville over May. So your general topic over the conference. I might as well just give you a chance to introduce yourself. I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
Yeah, I am Capitalisimo. You can call me Cap. I have a show on Mondays called Library of Mass Destruction, where I read weird history with Christopher Sandbach, a treasured mutual and friend of yours too, I am sure. And also on Wednesday with Mike of Pole, we host Drive Time Movie Night, where we watch a flick and provide color commentary. And then much of my work shows up on the Tookies Mag YouTube channel, where I and several compatriots do regular film media cultural commentary style stuff. So.
Yeah, I was almost concerned with the fact that like earlier today I saw somewhere on the timeline that you had some show with like Mike of Pole coming up ASAP, and I was like, oh shoot, did I double book you?
Oh no! That was totally yesterday.
Yeah, you're rather prolific on Twitter, so I was very glad to actually have you on.
I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, things have been sort of on fire on X over the last week. First and foremost,
and war, elsewhere.
Yeah, and elsewhere, literally on fire. There is possibly an impending war between
an impending war that includes a country I give a shit about, possibly, hopefully not, but yes.
I mean, well, the thing is, the show must go on. Even though there might be some sort of nuclear war in the Middle East, oh no, there's more conflict in the Middle East. The show must go on. I posted on Twitter somewhere something like, there might be nukes flying, but I'm just here in my little rowboat building my little ships. And but there are a few things that I guess us Americans have to worry about domestically. You wanted to speak a little bit about the No Kings protest that.
Well, I mean, broadly speaking, so you invited me on to talk about the state of fraternalism in America, and I was thinking that one of the really valuable things about in-person events in general is that people really very much interact in a fundamentally different way in person than they do online, right?
Well, that's almost certainly true.
Are you eating like an entire bag of chips? What is going on?
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm just gonna.
Oh, cool.
Fuck it. Let's do it live. We're gonna do it live.
Olympia.
We're gonna do it live.
Well, so one of the things is that people interact very differently, and you build social connections through like literally showing
rummaging
face.
Down here for some like tape that I'm looking for.
You get your nitrile gloves on, man, so you don't glue your fingers together.
Well, the thing is, model ships are mostly made out of. You use like mostly. What's it called? I mostly use
glue.
Like plastic glue that all the 45K guys use to put stuff together. But for model ships, you use cyanoacrylate or super glue. So I end up sticking my fingers together like
constantly.
And
Would it help to just like
I think
pre-laminate your fingers? Just like get the glue on there first?
The same way soccer players sometimes like put a gloss coat over their toenails. I should like just gloss coat my fingertips, like just the whole thing. Just dip it in plastic. That'll work. Well, in terms of IRL stuff, like this is technically a pregame show for Old Glory Club's.
That's right.
Old Glory Club's. What's it
Pony
called?
Express.
Pony Express Radio, our weekly Thursday topical show where a panel of guys discusses current events. I'm trying to get this like little turret guy out so I can actually paint this tan. The thing was, during the first few Old Glory Club conferences, we noticed that whenever you get well-dressed guys, guys with money, guys that can afford a suit, in the same room together, what do they end up doing? They end up networking, and they end up enjoying each other's company because of various self-selection mechanisms. And so there was a certain sort of impetus to export the sort of friend group that Old Glory Club was made out of across the U.S. regionally. And that's how the U.S. Old Glory Club chapters started, just encouraging our friends to network locally. And it's been very successful. I think we're at something like maybe, I wouldn't give away how many total members we have. Like OGC Central has no clue how many
lots of chapters.
We have many. I forget how many chapters it is, like 30 chapters, something like that.
As I recall, yeah.
Hundreds of members. And I think the project has so far been an absolute win on our part. And it's something that harkens back to, I guess, America Esoterica Americana, just to go off of Christopher Sandbatch's old Substack moniker.
Yeah.
And I've written substantially about fraternalism in America before. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I wrote an article called "The Owl and the Eye" on the birth of the Illuminati and its relationship with early Freemasonry. I'll see if I can just bring it up right now. But in it, I touch upon a few different, I guess, niche.
Infinity.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, the Owl and the Eye. How the Illuminati ended up becoming such a prevalent, I guess, pop culture
meme. Yeah. The Bavarian Illuminati did not properly exist for very long at all before disbanding, allegedly.
Well, I got into, I guess, the real numbers where, from 1776 to 1780, it was, essentially this crazy ex-Jesuit professors, like little social club to beat out the Jesuits in, Bavaria. And then Adolf Knigge, this sort of social climber, how do you say, sort of courtly intellectual very well networked guy, started introducing the membership of the Illuminati to the German nobility, and then here's what you get. You have this exponential increase in membership over time until eventually the public
discovers it.
Well, here is exactly what it is. The Bavarian government raided this one castle and discovered Anna Weishaupt's correspondence, and they're trying to pull off a French Revolution in Germany, and it's they essentially all got they were told disband or be publicly executed, so it pretty much went extinct. Although in my article I do bring up how here it is. Jedediah Morse popularized the Bavarian Illuminati survival theory in America and said that all of the anti-federalists were Illuminati crypto members.
Yeah, see, it turns out he got it exactly backwards.
Well, the thing was, well, there is, so the truth of the matter was that, I guess so there are a few different, I guess, theories that were going on during this time, right? There's the theory that the Bavarian Illuminati infiltrated the Dying Rite of Strict Observance, the sort of the premier Masonic sect or rite in Germany, and that rite ended up fleeing across Europe after it died and infiltrating Freemasonry at large
in the U.S.
across the U.S., which Washington assured several pastors and priests, this ain't happening.
This is not a thing, right?
And also the fact that, ironically, a lot of the anti-federalists were in fact Masons themselves or loosely affiliated with it. But that's kind of neither here nor there. I've written extensively about, I guess, Masonry in general, but I've also written about and extorted it's called the Golden Age of Fraternalism, which is a time back
when people were really collecting memberships and just sort of founding new observances and appendant bodies all willy-nilly.
So in terms of a general trajectory of, I guess, Freemasonry as a sort of premier fraternal organization, well, it was eclipsed by the Oddfellows in the late 1800s, but they fell a lot faster.
They still do kind of exist, not in any great numbers, but yes.
Yeah. So
the Oddfellows succeeded because there was essentially no sort of
what did you say, quality control, or it was a lot less.
There was no virtue component. There was no virtue component to the Oddfellows. It was the 100% theater kid stuff.
I really don't have too much of I really don't know too much about the Oddfellows. Like they're kind of known as like the poor man's Freemasons, kind of.
Yeah.
And a lot of Masons I know kind of agree with that sort of sentiment. But the general trajectory I've found is that if I look into like the actual numbers of how many guys were in, I guess, American Masonry early on, it's this is like the Scottish Rite Northern jurisdiction. I looked at the Southern jurisdiction as well. the general trajectory looks something like there are tens of thousands of secret society members, mostly Masons, in the U.S. during the early Republic. And that crashes due to the Morgan Affair of, I think it was like 1826, where
it
complicated.
It got so bad that there was an anti-Masonic party. So
yeah, although that particular party is kind of wild in and of itself, because they, at two different points, they actually asked prominent Masons to become the leadership of their party. Henry Clay, a prominent Mason, and later I think it's like William Wirt, who actually ran the party, was also a Mason and didn't actually speak out against it. It was more of just a sort of evangelical, anti-elitism, public transparency party. But
terrible.
there was
can't stand it.
General decline between the 1820s to the Civil War. And after the Civil War, there was an absolute explosion of fraternalism. And this article, it's like golden age of fraternalism. It says that at its peak, there were about 5.5 million members of very secret societies, about 40% of the total adult male population. And I also have a very good book called For the Common Good by, who was it? It was Kaufman, who argued along the lines that, there was a sort of competitive militarism that stunted the growth of the welfare state, because we already had fraternal insurance organizations. What do we need government for?
Mutual aid, attempting to contribute to the relief of distressed brothers. And there were of course also various various different ones, like Elks, Lions. There was this whole the loyal order of the water buffalo from the Flintstones. Like, fraternal organizations of many kinds were so common up until basically the boomers just decided to never join them, that it was really like a very consistent through line in American public life.
Where is it? One of the reasons why I picked up For the Common Good was because of this one review that stated that the golden age of fraternalism exacerbated racial and ethnic divisiveness, retarded the welfare state, nurtured a unique American love affair with guns, fueled libertarian paranoia and mutual distrust, and for even a causal role in prohibition. It stunted
based. Not so hot on prohibition.
It's stunted the development of social democratic statism, and one of the reasons why America has comparatively weak class consciousness, because if all of your workers and bosses hang out fraternally, what need is there for Marxist class conflict? Because you've already kind of solved the competency, the gulf between.
You knock off for the night, and your boss is cooking the green beans almondine for dinner, and you're presiding over him. It's not exactly the type of thing that builds resentment.
So that's condemnation of the golden age of fraternalism is why I had to pick it up, where back in the day, early 1900s, you would even sign up for your local volunteer militia group, like back in the early
before the National Guard existed.
Guard existed, you'd try to sign up for the most prestigious militia regiment possible, because that was one of your routes into becoming a public servant, being a leader of men who would inevitably end up voting for you on the ballot box. But you sign up for as many sort of fraternal organizations as you could, lead as many people as you could, and then profit by all these sort of networks that you've created.
Yeah, and it builds because the organizations are not you're selecting for kind of a an oblique quality, right? You're not going to get people who you would interact with normally necessarily, right? So you're getting a social network that is comprised of people who would otherwise you would not encounter. So you're building these connections that are valuable because they're rarefied for each individual, and like in diverse in an actual qualitative way. So
it's something that I guess Old Glory Club has shown me is that if you get 10 guys in a room, it's pretty you kind of quickly suss out who has the it factor in terms of leadership, in terms of who steps up, and it cuts right through, I guess, the sort of mundane sort of paperwork aspect of going back and forth on more effeminate chat rooms or whatever. You just see who actually is able to step up, and a sort of very masculine natural hierarchy develops almost immediately.
That's right. Well, and you know what? So this is I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's why these number one, in-person events are really important. Number two, why fraternalism has historically been important in the United States. And also number three, like to sort of circle back on the No Kings thing, like it's pretty clear that No Kings was itself a nothing burger, right? Nothing happened. It was completely astroturfed. It was a bunch of boomers and stuff who got out to get rained on or stand in the sun, depending on where they were.
Well, I don't even know how they got involved. It's like,
I'll tell you how they got involved.
Yeah,
tell you how they got involved, because it was totally paid for by Christina Walton, heiress to the Walmart fortune. And ads were placed, and people to plan it were hired to publicize this event. And there were local, like they used GIS to plan this out. They used like actual logistics to make sure that people would not need to travel long distances to attend. So there was a place, everywhere there was like a population center of like 50,000. There was a place to do a No Kings protest. So but here's sort of like why I mention this. There is, when you're doing that, there's going to be a bunch of boomers, and who the fuck cares? But the small number of comparatively young people are going to find each other. They're going to meet each other there. They're going to participate in this protest, and these protest things, like that is going to be building like your shitlib manor bund. This was the reason why it was, not just to get the raw numbers,
flexing a muscle so it doesn't atrophy, strengthening these sort of libtard sort of protesters, getting them addicted to the lifestyle.
Yeah, so getting their contact info, making sure that they know, when the next one is, because these are social events. Like protests are social events. If you are a shitlib and you go to a protest, it is a good way to get laid. It actually is. Like that. People talk about it. And it's not wrong. Like it's not incorrect.
That's kind of surprising. like
it's
all sorts of, well, there's a sort of physical aspect where you're out there, you're shouting, like blood is running high,
yeah.
and in the heat of the moment, certain organizers and protesters start looking at each other, and that's
I
how you
mean,
end up getting like,
people rise to the top. For example, like former member of Congress, Cori Bush, before she lost her primary, she gained prominence by literally just shouting the loudest in Ferguson in 2014 during the nascency of BLM. That's how she made her bones. That's how she met her husband. That is just where she came from. And obviously days of protests that involve rioting and burning and looting things are very different from the mild mannered kind of, put up some rude signs style of the No Kings protest. But in an extremely distributed way, there will be like some consequences
well,
to the connections that were made at that.
I've always heard that sort of, what is it, like left wing protests are sort of like a dial where you can go from like 1 to 10, and No Kings was a solid 1 or a 2 in terms of intensity, as opposed to
Right.
a full on riot number 10, burn down a city number 10. But more right wing protests are like a light switch where either it's just a bunch of boomers walking around, or people are getting shot. And
Right. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
right wings. There is no right wing protest culture because it's either treated like a terrorist action, or it is just not. It's like not
it's
in the
entirely
DNA.
facile.
Yeah. Exactly. So there's no protest culture on the right wing. But what but we can make the same kind of valuable social connections that the left wing does at their protests elsewhere, and that's the job of fraternalism, or a job of fraternalism, I should say.
Right. Like one of the things that you like, I was just talking to Fortisax last night about the Quiet Revolution, which it was essentially the complete overturning of old Quebec's sort of Catholic theocratic political machine in the 60s.
Okay.
And it was something of an anti-colonial, or like a post-colonial kind of struggle, where this francophone, like Quebecois culture, reasserted itself over Anglophone culture in the sort of zeitgeist of decolonization. But unlike Africa, Quebec is rather quiet in the way that they actually approached social revolution. Uh, you know, it's a lot more dignified, I'd say, than these. I reviewed Africa Dio a while ago on decolonization. It's we more conservative people do things a little bit differently and a little bit more by the books,
Yeah.
as opposed to the more visceral, 10 on the dial, like left wing types, I'd say.
I mean, I would agree. Other than unless it's basically, yeah, it's you're nowhere, or you're the Spanish Civil War. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's, was it Carl Dole who
That's right.
did the Spanish Civil War speech, which Disavow. This is not this is not
not advocating for
not advocating for a total civil war now. You know, all patriots go. You know, rally to the Capitol. You know, no.
Stand back and stand by. Yeah.
Yeah. This is more. Carl Dole's speech was more about how, in the heat of the moment, you know, in the intensity of the late Spanish Republic, the general right wing coalition was able to pretty quickly unify various elements of the right under a few basic principles, and was able to do so very quickly and very cohesively, unlike the left, which, you know, floundered and had a civil war while it was engaged in a civil war.
Yeah, had their own internal conflict because they wanted to form the, you know, the supreme local proletariat and would only rule via, you know, I don't know, unanimous agreement. It was a great way to make decisions.
Well, like I remember reading George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia, you know, I think a decade ago, and he was a Western volunteer for the anarchist cause in Catalonia, and his general analysis was like, hey, it was working pretty well for, like, you know, a year, and then starvation really set in. And then the Stalinists stabbed him in the back and tried to wipe him out.
Who could have ever predicted?
Yeah, they got ice picked.
Yeah.
But that's kind of neither here nor there. In terms of what happens when you get, I guess, general right-wing guys in a room for Old Glory Club events, is very similar to what happens during these, like, Carl Dole's hypothetical Civil War scenario, where, you know, a bunch of guys are in the same room. You suss out pretty quickly who is who is a sort of leader type, and who is going to be the followers of this sort of band. But I think it was actually pretty funny watching, I guess, the nursing homes roll out the mobility scooters for the No Kings protest.
Oh my God. Well, also you're maybe in your early 30s and you're in a mobility scooter because of your immense obesity.
Sad.
Yeah. They're sending in the heavy cavalry.
It's very unfortunate. Actually, no, it probably might be fortunate, because
yes, God, like, please give me such enemies.
Like, what there was the recent push by the Democratic Party to encourage men to join up with the Democratic Party once again, and they recruited all sorts of goblins and obese.
Well, yeah, who did they put? Olivia Hernandez, whatever the hell her last name is. The hungry hippo who, yeah.
I ended up actually listening to one of the interviews that she did with some, like, left-wing, like, podcast or whatever.
I may have watched that. Was her interlocutor there a man who was somehow less masculine than her?
Yeah, that was her. And I ended up watching, you know, two different, I guess, reactions to it. For some reason, for God knows whatever reason, I ended up watching, you know, Vauch's, you know, take on the situation. You know, what is the hypothetical, you know, worst type of leftist have to say about the framing of, you know, Jabba the Hutt trying to win back men? And he went straight for purity spiraling, where, you know,
he was like, we don't need them.
It's where Democrats have failed to be extreme enough and failed to be coherent enough in their messaging, is what his general take was. But then I was like, okay, I need a palate cleanser. Let's see what like the Cockroach King Asmongold had to say about, why.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm literally looking at the two worst people on earth, like have their takes about why.
I mean, Asmongold does not have like principles.
No,
Like, he just
but he's good for general gut reactions.
exactly, yeah.
So and his immediate take was, Jabba almost immediately resorts to tone policing, and I guess that's a very good. He's very good at finding the little, it's not in anything that Jabba says. It's how Jabba says it and the general messaging. And the fact that he was able to suss out tone policing right away, obvious hypocrisy on, invoking what is a real man, real men protect women's right to abort,
Yes, please commit infanticide.
Yeah,
I feel so
like
masculine when you
not understanding it
execute
at
these
all.
babies.
It was quite breathtaking to actually see this in action. But I don't know. It's something like either the Democrats are as clueless as they seem, or they're not even really trying, and they're just setting themselves up to fail. Like, who the hell thought that mobility scooters all across the U.S. was a good look to protest, anti-monarchy
For no kings.
for no kings
Internally, okay, so here's the thing.
Mhm.
It did two things. I overall, I think No Kings was a limited success for the left, by the way. Like, that my thesis here.
You mean they were able to flex overall numbers?
Well,
Like
so
raw
here's
numbers?
the thing. They
Mhm.
saw overall numbers. The people who attended, which is their vanguard, right? Well, maybe not necessarily their vanguard. It did include some of their vanguardists, but they needed fresh blood. So the people who attended that thing were committed. Like, obviously, the boomers are only going to be able to contribute essentially money. But there were young people there in some numbers, and those people are going to be more committed because they saw some action, right?
Mhm.
It also, if you look at the messaging from the left, like if you wade into Reddit and see how they were talking about it, they got a lot of positive propaganda images. So they're sharing those internally, feeling energized, feeling positive, because they've been demoralized for 6 months, right? They've been demoralized since the inauguration pretty heavily, even more so than they were after the election. So this is them trying to like rally and really muster up some resistance. But it also, but in addition to all of that, it sort of diffused some of the negative press that they got from the LA riots, right? Because No Kings was, in fact, no joke here, mostly peaceful. I think that there were
That's
maybe
a very
two
good
instances.
point.
I think there were maybe 2 instances nationally where anything got out of hand. So, which is too many, and there should be arrests, etc. But like, overall, that is a propaganda win for them.
This almost begs the question of like, what the hell happened with LA? Like, it seems like it just completely fizzled out, and as soon as the Marines showed up, everyone just went home, and now we're pretending that nothing ever happened, and everything's just gone back to business as usual. In a very, very
now
perverse way.
we're on to the Middle East again, the eternal Middle East.
Well, that's like it's I feel like, up until now, I really hadn't given it much thought about how little whiplash we've had. All of a sudden there's a new story, and we completely forget about like several thousand people, or not thousand, several million people in the street all across the U.S. is like a palate cleanser for your media diet, and now on to the next thing. We're going to invade Iran.
Yep. You think maybe your dopamine receptors aren't completely blown out? I beg to differ. They are absolutely loose as hell.
Well, I mean that, like, in what kind of environment? Like, just to get this back onto fraternalism. In what world could blasted out dopamine receptors exist in that could also have room for basic spaghetti dinner with the guys at the lodge? It's like these two things don't exist very well in the same world.
I disagree. I think actually I think spaghetti dinner with the bros is something that sort of resets your shit, right? It's grass touching.
Well,
excuse me.
Well, like I know that there are a few different, I guess, opinions on, I guess, the grill pill and touching grass, right? So there's a very good distributist video out there. I think it was like something like Franklin's corollary or the grill pill, which, like, the grill pill is a theory by I think it's El Trapo Trap House, where they postulated that the guy who just wants to grill is actually the most reactionary guy out there, because he just wants to grill and has everything to lose, but he's very completely detached from the political, and he just wants to grill, and as soon as anyone gets in his way, immediately he's radicalized.
God, I fucking wish that was true.
Which it's Matt Chipman or whatever?
Kreisman.
Kreisman, like the worst person in the universe, just had a very half-assed, like baked out of his mind kind of shower thought. But it's an interesting thought.
That is an interesting thought. I'll give him credit for it. So, but the problem is that the problem with that theory, right, is just that depending on whatever his social milieu is, right, it's not literally grilling, obviously, right? He's not a grill optimized utility monster. So whatever this person's sort of whatever stasis they're optimizing for, it's just not clear that would be moderateness, right? Like, what if the guy just like literally doesn't, what if he's just like, love me wife, simple as, and his wife is a fucking nightmare cat lady?
No, Jesus.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, I mean, these guys exist. You'd have like some sort of dude grimacing, trying to hide in his pain as he does a gender reveal for his 30-year-old son who had his cock cut off.
Well, like,
you know what I mean?
I think part of distributist argument was that reality is the biggest red pill, where the dad grimacing at the gender reveal stuff is going to be infinitely more radicalized and inarticulately enraged.
Is he though, or is he just going to live in despair until he expires?
I think
because I think you're underestimating the human ability to live in despair until you expire.
It's very dark. It's a very dark thought.
I mean, I do not see what's his name, Colin Mockery. the guy from Whose Line Is It Anyway, whose kid turned out. And I mean, the gender reveal photos of that, he had the full Hide the Pain Harold smile on.
Oh no.
And he has not not radicalized even one iota. So I mean,
Well,
granted his career probably relies upon being being okay with that.
one thing that I've noticed is that, especially when it comes to comedians, is where if they do break the party line, usually they go somewhat insane in the most like schizophrenic way. The main like most well known example is probably like Owen Benjamin, who was against the child transgenderism phenomena, and then completely lost his mind into conspiracy world. But I've seen this happen to a few different, I guess, comedians who want to have some sort of online career
Where they just flip.
Where they just flip and have this sort of conspiracy, half joking out their ass, kind of schizo career, and it almost never goes well.
So I have a this kind of we're kind of veering into the manosphere fraternalism level of this Venn diagram. I think that in some sense the manosphere kind of thing was an attempt to get fraternalism without doing it in person in a very like scalable, distributed way. Like that was the demand that was being that was sort of creating that.
Well, I mean, I think the manosphere, as like not as a caricature of the manosphere, what the manosphere actually represented for a lot of people was realpolitik towards the gender wars and gender conflict, where if we're going to have a gender war, might as well articulate.
So there's a lot of I guess I wasn't specifically talking about that. I was kind of more talking about the Joe Rogan thing, because Joe Rogan was never like pickup artist. Women are rate women on a scale in a way that is attempted to be a true taxonomy rather than just a jokey way to say it.
I why isn't there like a Joe Rogan of the left? Why is there? Why
it was Joe Rogan?
It was Joe Rogan. Like, these sort of bros just kind of hanging out, like shooting the shit and talking smack with each other, ends up being the greatest phenomena out of all of the great podcasts in America. Why is just guys bantering between guys, just guys being guys bantering the most popular content on the internet? And
yeah, it's because the present incarnation of the left is inherently anti-man.
Well, it's so stiflingly. It's like, can you really have good banter if you're constantly being monitored by the HR department?
Right.
Like, it's a very inhuman way of speaking, and like it's good if you're like trying to listen to the news in a very like matter of fact kind of way. But if you're just trying to listen to like ambient banter, you're not going to listen to that. You're not going to listen to the Longhouse and the lecturing and the moral posturing and
there may be nothing worse to listen to than someone adding a bunch of qualifications to a statement they're about to make, like like as a blah 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 who believes la 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 that and then they finally get to the fucking statement, whatever the hell it was, after intoning this litany of qualifications that are required to say the thing, is that may be, I think you're right, that may be one of the most vulgar and disconcerting things that you could possibly listen to.
Like that's what all these boomers who went to the No Kings protests have been listening to for the last, decade or so. Just Trump derangement syndrome, not all the time, with nothing better to do. Just
Yeah.
And this is what it happened. This is where it takes you. It takes you out of the old folks' home and into the streets in a mobility scooter, just to make sure that some college kids can network and get laid. It's kind of sad.
This is how the childless boomers reproduce.
That's awful. So
it's ridiculous. Zoomers do not have reproductive sex. They only, all the women who could potentially bear children have IUDs at the age of 13. So,
jeez. So this show that I run, it goes for exactly an hour up until 8:00, where let's see
when Pony Express starts.
When Pony Express Radio starts. I'll just put up the banner. So we have about maybe 5 minutes left. I don't have too many comments tonight. I'm like, I don't know what happened last night where I ended up with some absurd number, like 700 people watching on Twitter for some ungodly reason.
I'm so sorry that I'm a lobby.
No, it's I have no clue what the Twitter engagement gods do, where every other time it's like either over 500 or like no one watches on Twitter. And I think Sandbatch said something along the lines of like Twitter engagement is fake. But
yeah.
I don't really have too many comments. I think there's an early Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode about the aspects of protests. I think that's the episode where there was the guns thing, where two of the people are like pro-gun, two are anti-gun, and anyway, I start blasting, that meme comes out of it or something.
Oh yeah. Perfect. Perfect.
I don't know. Not too many comments today. In terms of, I guess.
Thank you, our strongest soldiers. Our strongest
soldiers. Good old Zenrath of the Bluestone Heritage League. And in terms of, I guess, what we think the future, or what the current state of fraternalism looks like in the U.S. and what it looks like in the future, I think your proposals in your speech were very optimistic. I don't know what you want to go too much into what you went over in your national conference speech.
To give a short a short rundown in terms of the fraternalism aspect of the talk, which was not like the entire thing, but yes, a short rundown on that. It's essentially that fraternalism is an extremely powerful thing that millennials and Zoomers probably are not sufficiently familiar with, because boomers kind of abandoned this thing that was extremely important throughout American history. Like, America was absolutely a country that was deeply involved in fraternal organizations until essentially our parents, or grandparents, as the case may be, generation. So it is coming back. Even the Masons, the consolidation of the Masons is still going on, but the increase of the average age of Masons used to go up by 1 year every year. That rate is slowing down. And you don't necessarily need to join the Masons, because places like the OGC are doing the same thing and are not a moribund organization. The OGC is a rising star. So
like I know there are several members of the OGC chapters that are Knights of Columbus.
Sure.
For the various Catholics who have certain apprehensions about Masonry itself.
Yeah,
I
Catholics are allowed to join the Knights of Columbus. They're allowed to join the Hibernians. They're allowed to join Elks Club, Rotary, Eagles, Lions Club. They're specifically not allowed to join the Masons.
even though they're almost always like kind of copy pasted.
Yeah, I mean, it's for various historic reasons. I'm also a cradle Catholic. I'm in a state of grievous sin, according to the present teachings of the church. Hopefully one day that will not be the case. But
Joe Biden was made a Mason at sight by the Prince Hall Masons. Was it like half a year ago?
Also completely also presided over like advocating for abortion and was not excommunicated. But I mean, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
I would never say that the church ought to change its policies based on my opinions, because I am not the Pope. So
we have an American Pope now, though, so things might change.
Do. We have the Central Time Zone Pope, greatest Pope of all time.
I do have to address the fact that I misspoke. It was in the Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode. Mac goes to an abortion protest and hooks up with one of the protesters.
That's right. He's like, because they all want to fuck, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to have to worry about a pregnancy.
Yeah, and
that's right.
She's like, I'm pregnant, and he's immediately like, you got to get an abortion, which is so horrible to say, and it just reinforces just how awful the people of the cast of Always Sunny in Philadelphia is.
Yeah.
They're purposefully disgusting creatures, but it's a good joke. I'm pretty sure there's also that. There was an episode where Dennis decides to become like an environmentalist, trying to save a tree just to get laid,
just to
prove a point, exactly. And to prove a point. And he ends up cuckolding this poor guy who gets strapped to a tree while he's, he has his way with this environmentalist hippie chick. They probably are onto something there. But I don't know. I'm a little bit more pessimistic about the state of, I guess, older secret societies, where I've seen a lot of, I guess, consolidation and a few different resurgent lodges. But overall, in my travels, there's a lot of them are graying out, and there's a whole lot of property and a whole lot of
fair enough. Yeah,
all of that money.
All of that is very true. Yes, the grand lodges of the various states and territories are still very well capitalized. So a young person who wanted to, for some mercenary motives, join an organization, they would find quite a lot of funds available to do things with. If you were to do that, I'm not saying you should, but I am saying you could.
Well, I'll just share a screen probably one last time. For the where is it? For the Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, why join? Fellowship, friendship, family relationships, community relationships, chance to be a leader. A lot of the articles that I see say quality over quantity.
Mm-hmm.
However, I'm a little bit black pilled here up in the north, because in the northern jurisdiction, they've introduced like virtual degrees where you get your Scottish Rite degrees by watching an online.
Here you go. You get 29 degrees in one day. We're gonna run one of them in your left ear at 3 times speed, and the other one in your right ear at 3 times speed, and you're gonna get completely brain melted by Albert Pike all in under 6 hours.
Not gonna lie, I can't get through Morals and Dogma. It's a mess. It's a hot mess, and
It's great.
it is kind of great, but it's a mess. But here's a northern jurisdiction. Yeah, we'll bolster membership online and in person by having, we have blogs and we have
The boomers who are making these decisions are completely do not understand that the exclusivity and difficulty of joining is the whole thing. And when they lower these barriers, they're actually killing the organization.
Yeah, like digitizing and both digitizing and more theatric productions. Not gonna lie, I don't see that actually paying off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Tragically.
All right. Well, I think Pony Express Radio is starting to get off the ground. So
they do have their theme song playing now, and
that could mean anything.
It could mean anything. It
5
could go
minutes
on
late,
for 30
10 minutes
minutes
late. Good old Pony Express Radio. Gotta love it. But do you have any, I guess, final comments or points to make with regards to, I guess, either the utter state of these protests or
I mean, that it was really an aside, but my overall thing is get involved, do things local to you in person with like-minded chuds. And if you're a non, that's fine. You work it out. Do OPSEC.
Would you like to? Oh yeah, the implication. You might actually
get her on a boat. She can't decline because of the implication.
Yeah, you join an OGC chapter because of the implication. You might actually enjoy the OGC.
You might.
I know you showed your Telegram Spaces, your Twitter Spaces already. But could you remind the people watching when, where?
That's right. Library of Mass Destruction every Monday at 7 p.m. Central Time, God's time, on X.com and YouTube at Tookies Mag. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time on X.com and Rumble, Drive Time Movie Night. And let's see. And I mean, we definitely have some more pre-recorded content coming out on the Tookies Mag YouTube channel soon with regards to books and games and stuff like that.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for being so gracious as to present or come on to my show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'll see you guys next time on the Nautical Chronicle on Saturday. We're having Morgoth's review on to chat about the absolute state of the UK. And to be honest, I think it's going to be if this was something of a black pill tinged conversation, you've got nothing on the state of the UK. Thank you all for attending.
I'm sure Morgoth has some comments about the recent Hope Not Hate thing as well, which also does kind of get into fraternal organizations and in-person events. But I'll leave that for him.
Yeah, we don't. I'm not sure if we actually want to give that too much fire.
Maybe that's true.
Maybe that's true, but we'll see you guys on Saturday. And tune in to Pony Express Radio live.
Do it now.